Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Auction for the Soul. This week's Perashat is Perashat Vayehi. Okay, so we are in the middle of a story that is a profound story with very deep lessons, especially for those of us that are parents. And even if you're not, there's so much to learn from this week's Perashat. So we are continuing off where we left off, which is Jacob, Yaakov, finally ends up meeting with his lost son, Yosef. They end up, families of Jacob end up moving down to Egypt. They settle and they are getting ready for a long stay as the famine continues and the brothers are cognizant of the fact that there's going to be a exile that's going to happen, right? We know that the boys know there's a tradition in their family from Abraham that the children, the descendants of Abraham, are going to be a stranger in a strange land. And now the brothers are preparing. And as over here, Jacob is getting older, Parsha begins with him speaking to Joseph and telling him that I'm getting old, and that the baton of leadership needs to pass down from my generation to the next generation. And the Parsha begins with these very interesting words. Like Rashi points this out. If you are someone who's standing in front of the Torah, you'll notice that the Torah itself is considered this Parsha is considered Parshat Stuma, which means it's typically there's a space or a gap in the lines between two parshiot. But over here in this week's Parsha, there is no gaps. It's just one long, open expression of reading from one Parsha to the next Parsha. And therefore, that is called a Parshat Stuma. It's closed, right? Meaning there's no room for anything new to appear in this week's Parsha. Okay, so Parsha reads, Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim shev'a esre shana v'yimei Yaakov shnei chayav v'shev'a shinim v'arba'im u'mei shana. Jacob lived in Egypt. He was there for 17 years, and these are his days. Vayehi yemei Yaakov. Okay, these are the years of his. He lived for 147 years. Now, the Balaturim and others will point out the word Vayechi equals 34, and these are the 34 years he had with Yosef together. These were the finest years of his life. But the last over here, these were the 17 years of his life where he had the most amount of revelation, and he was in a state of simcha, in a state of happiness. And the question is why? Why should he be so happy right now? Yaakov is witnessing the fact that his children made some major mistakes in their calculations about how they were going ahead and judging Yosef, his favorite son at the time. Okay, he made lots of mistakes about how they were able to be honest and truthful about what happened to Yosef. So much lying had gone through it. His sons Shimon and Levi were responsible for wiping out a city. There's so much that's wrong here. Why is he happy the last 17 years of his life? So there's different answers to that question. Well, the first answer is that up until now we know that prophecy is something that typically does not happen outside of Israel. There's something unique about living in the land of Israel itself. I feel very prophetic when I'm there. I was just there not too long ago. And there's something powerful about in the land. When a Jew is in the land of Israel, there's a very deep feeling, a connection, something spiritual, something that brings him to a higher state of reality that you don't have outside of Israel, or I would say more correctly, it's very difficult to connect or to find outside of Israel. Yosef, Yaakov, is in this place where he's outside of Israel, and he's in Egypt, and God's with him, and he's happy that he's in exile, and he recognizes that God is with him outside of the land of Israel. And this is, by the way, this is the theme, I would say, for this parsha itself. The theme of the parsha is that God is with us in the most darkest places. I think about this, a lot, especially post 10:7, that light is born from darkness. That all of us are born in a dark place and we're drawn into the light. That is the world that God created. All pain, all suffering, all difficulty is the challenge, the darkness that we need to go through in life to try to bring some sparks of greatness into this world. That is what the message of this week's Parsha is, I believe. Okay, and it continues. And Parsha continues. V'yikravu yemei Yisrael lamut. He's getting ready to die. Now, you don't see these words by any of the other avot. And the reason why we don't see it there is because Yaakov is the first one of the Avot to get sick. Up until this time, the way most people died, this is all according to Midrash, you would you'd have a little cold, you'd sneeze, and you died. That's why we say God bless you when people sneeze. We say God bless you. The custom is because the tradition was in the world that when you sneezed, you died. You survived the sneeze. Oh, God bless you. You must have some amazing merit to protect you from that sneeze. But Yaakov says, you know what? I don't want to live. I don't want to just die suddenly and not be prepared. I want to bring sickness into the world. Sickness is not a bad thing. It helps a person kind of get grounded and acclimated, help him realize that life is not infinite, and that he has to get himself in order. And that's what's happening here. Yaakov realizes he's going to die. Now, interestingly, you see there's a shift in the way in which the verses talk about Jacob. The first pasuk says, Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim, and these are the years of Vayehi Yemei Yaakov. These are his days. And then the next pasuk, Vayikruvu Yemei Yisrael. These are the times of Israel. Well, make up your mind. Is his name Jacob or is his name Israel? Which one is it? So whenever you see the Torah calling Yaakov, Yaakov, that is Jacob in a lower form, in a lower state. When the pasuk talks about Yisrael, we're talking about Jacob in a higher state, in a higher spiritual plane. This idea that V'yikravu Yemei Yisrael Lamut isn't just that Jacob's going to die. It means the time of Israel is coming to an end also over here. That the tribes are going to be put into a very difficult situation. And therefore, Yaakov is now calling his sons together. We got to get together. I got to give you my brachot. I got to give you my blessings. V'yikra lebno Yosef. He calls his children and Joseph. V'yomer lo im nama tzadichen be'enai. Please, whatever you do, make an oath. Don't bury me in Egypt. And he doesn't want to be buried in Egypt because he doesn't want to be made into a god. And he also is afraid that that Joseph might take revenge on Jacob for not burying his mother in Ma'at Machpelah, and therefore maybe he wouldn't bury him properly. Regardless, he's letting them know the time is coming to an end, and he makes them promise, and they promise to him. Okay, fine. Let's fast forward. They're all getting sick, and now V'yikach et shnei banav imo. Yosef takes his two children with him, et Menashe et Ephraim, two boys, Ephraim and Menashe. V'yaged leYaakov, and he tells Yaakov, V'yomer hine bincha Yosef ba. Right? He says, right? Someone tells Yaakov that your son is coming, and now V'yitchazek Yisrael. Yaakov hears that his son is coming back to him. V'yeshev al hamita. He gets strong and he sits up on his bed. He's sick. He's a sick man, and he's standing up. He's getting ready to get up. The words al hamita, those two words together, are only found two places in all of Tanakh. Can anyone here guess where the other place is? One of them's here, and the other one is in the book of Esther. And what happens over there? Haman falls on the mitah, right? Over here, Yaakov is on the mitah, he's sick, and he has the power to get up. Chazak Yaakov. Over there, Haman is in the highest state, right? He's so elated, he's so proud, he's got so much power and connections, nothing can get in the way, and he falls on the mitah. A guy who's standing falls, and a guy who's lying down can get up, right? What a powerful idea that you can choose to look at your circumstances and saying it's all me and end up with nothing, or you can choose and recognize it's all somebody else, the big guy in the sky, and recognize that he gives you the power to do remarkable things, even if you're feeling weak. V'yitchazek Yisrael v'yeshev al mitah. He's able to stand up. A guy lying down can stand up. Okay, so Yaakov sees these children, and now Yaakov is going to bless them. And he says, "V'ata shnei benecha hanodim lecha be'eretz Mitzrayim." The two boys you had that were born in Egypt, ad boy alecha Mitzrayim lihim. These boys are mine now, which means Yaakov is saying they're like the Shvatim. They have the same status as a Shevet. Now, I'm not a grandpa yet. I'm hoping, God willing, soon. Inshallah, we should all be grandparents at the right time. But they say that the best part of being a grandpa is that you can play with the kids, you give them back to the kids, and they leave. But I don't know how my children would feel if I said to them, you know what, your kids, they're not my grandkids. Your grandkids, the grandkids are like my children. I like them like I like my kids would be upset about that. But over here, Yaakov sees something deep. Every single Friday night, if you're a father and you have boys, you make a bracha. You give a blessing to your children. Okay? I put my hands on my boy's head, and I say, Yisimcha Elohim, Ke'Ephraim u'Kemanashe. Right? May God, right? I want God to bless my children like Ephraim and Manasseh. I want God to bless them like Ephraim and Manasseh. These were the words in this week's Parsha. These are the words of Yaakov Avinu. And the question is, why Ephraim and Manasseh? Why not Reuven and Shimon? Why not Yisachar and Zvulun? Why not somebody else? Why is the blessing after those two boys? And the answer is, this is the first time in this part of Jewish history where boys were born in exile and maintained a deep spiritual connection to the Almighty. That this parsha is a segue. Next week is Shemot. Right? We're in Egypt as slaves. We're introduced as slaves next week. And this week we're part of the house of Jacob. Our brother, the uncle is Joseph, the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. And in a generation it's all gone. And over here, we're saying, you know what? Yaakov's saying, do you know, Yosef, what you accomplished? You raised children in exile that have the same spiritual capacity as my own children. Lihem. They're like my kids. I'd say more than that. We know that Yosef married Osnat. Who was Osnat? Who was Osnat's mother? Osnat's mother was Dinah. Dinah, we know, was raped by Shechem. We know that Dinah's mother was Leah. We know that Leah was done. She made a din. She made a cheshbon. She said, you know what? I don't want my sister to have only one kid. There's going to be only 12 tribes. And she's pregnant with her seventh. She makes a cheshbon. She makes a calculation. I want this child to be a girl. So here she sacrifices at one of the tribes, has a girl that's raped. But you fast forward, what happens? Those children, the grandchildren, are Ephraim and Manasseh. If you stop the story in life, sometimes it looks terrible. But if you wait to see the end, the results at the end, Ephraim and Asher are like Reuven and Shimon. Leah's sacrifice gives her 2 more tribes. She doesn't get 6 tribes. She gets 8 tribes associated with her sacrifice. God is good. He wants to give you good. Sometimes you got to wait for it to unfold. So the Pasha continues. We see that Yosef is this blessing, gets this blessing of his children. We call them we bless our children with the Ephraim and Asher because we want our children to have this deep connection. Now, why is it that Yosef doesn't get a bracha? Where's Yosef's blessing in this week's parsha? All the other brothers get a blessing, but Yosef does not. If you open up the 4th chapter, the 4th reading in this week's parsha, you'll see all of them get a bracha, but Yosef, right? Yosef's bracha is Yosef. Yosef's superpower is sod. Yosef's superpower is that he's someone who's deeply connected to the world of spirituality, and at the same time deeply connected to the world of finance and philanthropy. He's very much a Jew that is involved in every aspect of the material world, but yet at the same time deeply connected to spirituality. This is something that I believe every dad wants for their boys, to be super successful financially, but and not to at all to let go of their ability to maintain a deep connection to God and Judaism. That's what we're all striving for. We all want that. We want our kids to be Tamimei Chachamim, but super successful in everything that they do. How do you do that? How do you get there? Yosef, gorgeous, handsome, a model. The Midrash says that when Potiphar would call, she would have like a little lunch with her friends, her girlfriends, and they'd be cutting apples. You'd call out Yosef. They'd look at him and they'd slice their fingers because he was so gorgeous. Can you imagine? Like a Fabio kind of guy, like stunning, long hair, beautiful eyes, beautiful teeth, perfect tan, charismatic, intelligent. He comes out and you're like, whoa, who is that guy? Right? And Yosef never lets it get to his head. The brothers mistakenly judged him for it. Mistakenly made that mistake and thinking he's a superficial guy. When Yaakov meets him, he realizes, wow, Yosef, he did it. He was like my brother, Esav. Esav was this beautiful, handsome guy, super talented, a little narcissistic, and lost his way. But my son, Yosef, wow, he got it. He did it. He figured it out. He did it. He figured out a way of maintaining this deep connection to God. You know, I pause for a moment and I think about what's happening in the world today. You saw what happened in JFK yesterday in LAX, where there were these protesters who decided to disrupt the people's travels by blocking the roads from people getting to their flights. They want attention. You know, the world is a different place, and it happened so fast. going into this Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, I was not expecting 10/7. I was not expecting to run missions to Israel. The world changed. And we should be so grateful for everything that we have. But if we're Jews and we're students of history, we need to be mindful. We need to remember that what we have is a blessing now. I don't know what's going to be tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know what challenges are going to lay ahead. I know that when things are calm, it's a time to build. It's a time to spend more time in doubling down on the values that we have, spending more time on building ourselves up as individuals, of building the stamina necessary to have the strength to overcome challenge that may or may not come. I don't know. But I want to be prepared. Because if I'm a student of history, I'm going to say, you know what? Things are unfortunately may repeat themselves again. I don't know if my grandchildren are going to speak English. I don't know if they're going to be American. I don't know. I can't say. Look how fast the world changed in a few months. I don't know. Look what happened at Harvard. If you'd have told me last year that the president of Harvard University could not publicly condemn anti-Semitism in a hearing, I'd laugh at you. Say, you're crazy. You're Majnun. What are you saying? But that's the world we're in right now. It's changed. It's not the same. And these young people who are graduating these schools, they're getting jobs, they're making decisions, they're going to find out you're a Jew. I don't know how they're going to respond to you if they think you're a colonizer and that you're the oppressor. I don't know what happens then. But I know this week's Parsha has a vision for our future. This is the first time in the Torah where a grandfather has a relationship with his grandchildren. Isn't that interesting? You see the relationship. You don't see it with Abraham and Yaakov. You don't see it with Yitzchak and the Shvatim. It doesn't happen. But here you're seeing a relationship with a grandfather to a grandchild. There's a vision for the future. When a grandfather has a grandchild, he's thinking about the future. That's why people who don't want to have children are selfish. They're not thinking about building tomorrow. The people that are having families, building big families, raising children, giving them an education, and sacrificing their lives to make the future a better place. That's what kids are. Kids are an extension of ourselves. Kids are an extension of our ability to bring good into the world. That happens in this week's Parsha. Yaakov is giving a blessing to the children, not just to the Shvatim, but to us. Every word in the Parsha is a unique message of strength and encouragement. And if you go through Revi'i, which we're not going to have time today, you go through that fourth reading in the Aliyot this week, you'll see that Yaakov doesn't sound like he's giving brachot at all. Reuven, Bechori, Ata, Kochi, my firstborn, my strength, yeah. You should have been superior in rank, right? But Pachaz Kamaim, right? You're like relentless like water. You're impetuous. He's going through Shimon v'Levi, Achim Kli Chamas, right? Shimon and Levi, your brothers, your stolen instruments, as there are their weapons. He's criticizing them, and every single one, Arur Apam Ki Az Vavartim Ki Kashta, cursed be the wrath, for it's mighty. He's pointing out all their flaws. Now, if I called my boys into my room and say, "Hey, listen, Yaakov, Akiva, I love you, but no, you have a short fuse. You don't take time seriously. I give them musar. That's not going to be the way I want to end on my deathbed. That's not the way I want to. That's not the way I want to be remembered. But why is he doing it? And this is something that you and I would say we don't fully appreciate. We'll understand hopefully afterwards. I think there's no greater blessing, and I think that's what Yaakov is doing, than knowing your weaknesses. If we raise children to recognize that every moment of life is about loving, giving, growing. If we raise our kids to recognize that our shortcomings are opportunities to develop ourselves into remarkable human beings, then wouldn't you agree that knowing your shortcoming is the greatest blessing? And that's what Yaakov is doing here with his kids. He's telling his kids, my friend, this is your weakness. This is your opportunity to grow into something more. You want to build the future? You want to go into exile? You want to be able to figure out how to survive? Fix your weaknesses. Build up on them. Become something more. Don't settle. And he keeps going over and over again by Yehuda. He says, Gur Aryeh Yehuda. A cub and a grown lion is Judah. Why? Ready? We know that Reuven, Yehuda, was at one point the king of the brothers. But it says Vayered Yehuda, he went down, right? He went down. He lost his way a little bit. The whole incident with Tamar was him losing his way, selling his brother Yosef, and he lost his way. But he's a good Arya. When a lion lies down and he gets up, he's the same guy. Are you and I the same people before we go to bed as we were before that? How many people of us waste our time in our beds doing nothing? Yehuda is the same guy. Gur Aryeh, when he lies down at that cub, when he gets up, he's the same. He has the same energy, the same power to pounce. He has the same ability to go ahead and do what he has to do. He's strong through and through. That's Yehuda. That's why we're named after him. And I'm going to end with the following. If you go to the last pasuk in the parsha, at the end, the very, very end, okay, it talks about the death of Yosef. Yamot Yosef ben me'ah ve'eser shanim v'yichatnu oto v'yasem ba'aron b'mitzrayim. Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed, and he was placed into a coffin in Egypt. That's the end of Genesis, the most uninspiring ending of any book. You read Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings, they're sailing off into the sunset, and they're like going some unreal plane. Like, this would be a great place to talk about Gan Eden. Talk to me about, like, he's greeted by Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and the fathers are all united. Show me a Force ghost like in Star Wars. Tell me a good story here. But what's the Jewish story at the end? They're dead. The guy's dead. He's buried. He's embalmed. And then the next week we just go through it again. They're all dead, and now we're slaves. But what's powerful about this is that it's true that all things do come to an end, and that's why I love the Torah, because it's just going to tell it to you straight, it's honest truth. He dies, right? And they buried him, but that's not the end of the Jewish people. This is the beginning of a very dark period for us, right? For the Jewish people in the book. But we end the parsha with Chazak, Chazak, right? We say Chazak at the end of the parsha. Why? The first parsha, we see challenge, we see the uncomfortable reality of the situation that they're going to be in, and our response is Chazak. We want to be strong, because ultimately it's going to be my choice to respond to my situation. That's what Sefer Breshit is about. The book of Breshit, if we want to do a quick review, the whole book is about people, very well-intentioned people, and their mistakes, and their shortcomings, and their drive and their desire to be something a bit more. The children and the grandchildren. No grandfather, there's no grandfather alive that doesn't want to see, no father alive who doesn't want to see his grandchildren. Every dad wants to see a grandkid, right? That's the greatest blessing, I think, for a parent, to see the grandkids. See them, not only to see them, to watch them be successful, to thrive, to succeed in making the world a better, greater place. That's what the story is about for us. This is a story of our parents, our grandparents, the story of our people, the story of people who were flawed, like our parents and our grandparents before them. But what makes us Am Yisrael, what makes us Jews, what makes us a group of people that have been able to walk out of every big nation on the planet and still be here to tell the story, is the idea that you and I are supposed to be Chazak. We choose how we respond, Chazak. We choose how we're going to respond to the circumstance that we're in. It's up to us. Bereshit is the beginning and it's the end. Bereshit ends with the death of Joseph. But it also begins, the next week's Parsha begins with what? With the Jewish people in exile. And then all the books are about our ability to want to become something more. We're in exile. Are we going to find the connection to God? Are we going to try to find truth in a world of lies? That's up to us. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Chazak, chazak v'nisrael chazak. Am Yisrael chai. Because we're still here. We choose to be here, and we're never going away. Anyway, love you all. Thank you so much for listening. I pray every day that the hostages should be returned, and that Chayalim, the war should end. We should only see safety and security. Mashiach should come now. And, God willing, together in Israel, only seeing happiness, health for everybody. Have a great week, everybody. Shabbat Shalom Avarach. Thank you for coming.
Shabbat Shalom.